Well, here's the question for today, folks. Do you cringe when you see your retired friends or maybe even your own parents spending recklessly? Are you worried about falling into those same money traps when you retire? Well, on today's show, we're going to cover some financial bad habits and, more importantly, how to avoid them. So stay tuned for a very frank discussion.
Welcome to the Ask Ralph podcast, where listening to an experienced financial professional with over 30 years of experience can help you make sense of confusing questions, current headlines, and industry trends about taxes, small business, financial decision-making, investment strategies, and even the art of proper budgeting. Ask Ralph makes the complex simple by sharing his real-world knowledge from a Christian perspective with all things financial. Now here's your host, Ralph Estep Jr.
Welcome to our Motivational Monday show. I'm so glad you chose to join us. I just want to thank you for listening and, more importantly, supporting the program. I'm coming to you today from the Estep Farm in the Saju Accounting Studio. Let me put on my podcaster hat, put down those overalls, and let's push that adding machine to the side. Let's get into some financial wisdom from a Christian perspective. In today's episode, we're going to uncover some of the most common bad money habits that can truly plague retirees. And these are things you're going to want to avoid yourself. Then we'll explore some practical strategies to break negative patterns and maintain wise stewardship well into your golden years. Well, don't forget to subscribe to the show and join our email list. You do that at AskRalphPodcast.com so you don't miss tomorrow's show. For our Technology Tuesday show, we're going to talk about some steps you can take to declutter your digital life. Yes, you heard me right. Declutter your digital life. We all need some digital cleansing, and tomorrow I'll share some great ideas on how to do that. We also just launched an insiders group on Facebook, and boy, is it growing. And I encourage each of our listeners to join the group to continue the conversation from the show. It's a great place to share ideas for the show, and we've had some great discussions out there already. It's a place to talk about your triumphs and also the things that are challenge you. I have a link in the show notes today, so I encourage you to join. Well, let's kick things off with Proverbs chapter 21, verse 20, which reminds us that precious treasure and oil are in a wise man's dwelling, but a foolish man devours it. I believe we've used that one before, but it's very appropriate today. So first, let's answer a basic question. Why is this topic so critical? Well, simply put, my friends, retirement is an expensive phase of life that can truly span decades. When I was preparing today, I found this. The average American retirement lasts 18 years. So even with a decent nest egg, and unfortunately a lot of people don't have that, and Social Security or a pension, you'll need to carefully manage your resources. Otherwise, you risk outliving your savings in just a few years of careless spending. Unfortunately, I think we all have seen stories of when this happens. This issue hits close to home for me. I've witnessed dear older friends cashing out their 401ks or running up those credit card debt to support truly unrealistic lifestyles, and my friends, it's heartbreaking. I want so much better for all of you, my valued listeners. So here's the truth. With a bit of education, self-discipline, and God's guidance, you can avoid financial pitfalls and enjoy a truly prosperous and wonderful retirement. So let's explore 5 bad money habits that can sink retirees so you know what to watch out for. The number 1 habit is this: splurging on travel. Being footloose and fancy-free in retirement can be alluring, and far-flung adventures often top retirement bucket lists. But extensive travel, especially abroad, is incredibly expensive for retirees living on fixed incomes. Even domestic travel adds up quickly when you do it for weeks or months at a time. Things like fuel, hotels, entertainment, and eating out drain travel budgets fast. Not to mention the incidentals like souvenirs. You got to bring something home for the grandkids. Illnesses, losing things, and weather delays. So how can you indulge in your wanderlust without sabotaging your financial plan? So Ralph, how do you do that? Well, here's the first action step. I always like to give you things that you can use. Set a reasonable annual travel budget that aligns with the retirement plan and stick to it diligently. You got to be selective about trips and watch expenses closely while you're traveling. Consider cheaper destinations, scaled back trips, house swaps, budget lodging, and avoiding peak seasons. To be honest with you folks, as I get older, I like to avoid those anyway. So let's move on to bad habit number 2. This one is going to cause some discussion, and that's supporting adult children As parents, we want to help our children succeed in life, but continuing financial support after they become independent adults can foster unhealthy dependence. I have seen this so many times. I've seen it completely decimate clients. Also jeopardizes your own retirement. That's the whole point. Many retirees who pay for their adults' kids' expenses out of guilt or some sense of parental duty. Things like cell phone bills, rent, car loans, spending money, vacations, weddings, tutoring, or private schools for the grandkids. We can make a list a mile long. Often this support has no end date. This leads to ongoing strain and it breaks down the relationship, but more importantly, breaks down the finances. So here's another action step. You've got to have candid conversations with financially independent children about gradually weaning off support. When they were little ones, you weaned them away. You wanted them to be independent. Well, guess what, folks? They need to be independent in their adulthood. You've got to set reasonable timelines and boundaries. Redirect gifts to education funds for the grandkids and stick to your guns. That's the key to this. Don't let them break you down. Well-meaning sacrifice can still be foolish overindulgence that harms everyone in the long run. It harms you financially, and you're making them dependent on you for life. What happens when you're gone? What are they going to do then? So let's move on to bad habit 3, and that's carrying debt into retirement. It's staggering how many Americans enter retirement still saddled with debt. I see clients in their late 60s, early 70s with 30-year fixed-rate mortgages, and they still got 29 or 28 years left on it. In fact, here's a sobering statistic. The average retiree today carries $86,068 in debt. Now, of course, that's mostly mortgages, but it's also credit cards, auto and personal loans. Servicing debt is challenging on a limited income. It often forces drastic lifestyle cutbacks. These debts also pressure retirees to take greater portfolio risk, hoping for higher investment returns. This gamble can backfire disastrously in market downturns. Think about it like this. If you're young, you've got plenty of time for a recovery if the market tanks. But if you're not, you don't have that time. Carrying debt loads robs us not only financially, but emotionally and spiritually as well. There is wonderful freedom when we walk in God's blessings of prosperity and get to bless others because we are debt-free. I've said this a time or two on the show. You will never be able to bless others if you're not financially prosperous yourself. So you've got to pay attention to that. So that leads me to another action step. And that's this. Make paying off all consumer debt before retirement a top priority. I would even venture to say maybe you shouldn't retire until it's all paid off. Well, you might ask, Ralph, how do I do that? It's not rocket science. It's important to create a payoff plan. Trim your expenses. Pick up extra work if needed. Sell assets. Maybe you need to downsize. And pour every spare cent toward becoming debt-free. Start with the smallest debts first for early wins, then plow ahead without compromise. You're going to thank yourself in just a few short years when you are completely debt-free. Well, now let's discuss bad habit number 4, and that's supporting unhealthy adult relationships. I have seen this with my clients, and it's sad, but it's true. Loneliness causes some retirees to settle for companions that slowly drain their finances. Whether due to desperation, naivete, or impulsive judgment calls, retired folks can fall victim to financial abuse in dysfunctional relationships. I have seen this firsthand, and it is brutal. These red flags include controlling partners who restrict access to money, thin official relationship statuses, shady background, addictions, pervasive money problems, refusal to work, erratic behavior, and isolation from friends or family. I'm sure you could name about 10 others. Regardless of the circumstances, though, it's never wise for retirees to fully financially support another able-bodied adult or take on unreasonable financial risk for another's benefit. We got to safeguard resources for our own care first, and I'm not saying to you to be selfish, but you've got to pay attention to this. I don't know how many people I've met, they want to help people, they want to save people, they want to change people. But you've got to be financially secure before you even try to do that. So here's another action step. Proceed slowly and cautiously if entering a new relationship in retirement. Watch for those red flags of financial abuse. Unfortunately, there are people out there that are looking for what I've heard the term sugar daddy to take care of them. And they prey on these people because maybe they lost a spouse, maybe they're lonely, maybe they're having health issues. You just got to have your antenna up. And what goes along with this is never add new names to assets right away. Maintain separate household finances until relationships prove healthy over significant time. And here's the deal, folks. Stay connected with trusted family and friends for gut checks. And most importantly, seek guidance through prayer on when and how much to reasonably share. And now on to our final habit, number 5, compulsive shopping. This one is really rough. It's disheartening to watch fixed income retirees fritter away money on frivolous shopping excursions, storage lockers crammed with unused stuff, home shopping cable channels blaring 24/7, or garage sales every weekend. I did a show a few weeks ago about these self-storage units, and I would encourage you to go back and listen to it if you haven't already. What a waste of money. While anxiety, depression, hoarding tendencies, or simply loneliness can drive compulsive consumption, the root cause is often an unwillingness to accept the constraints of living on a retirement income. One of the things I think of my clients that are successful in managing retirement finances is they've been able to understand and accept the constraints they live under. If you don't do that, this can become a huge problem. Unfortunately, our consumer culture feeds the myth that lavish living standards should continue indefinitely after retiring. That's why so many folks find themselves staring at decimated savings and struggling to make ends meet just a few years into retirement. I've seen this so many times, but it doesn't have to be this way. So let's discuss our final action step. You've got to reframe your mindset from keeping up with consumer culture to finding meaning and fulfillment by simplifying and sparking joy in what you already own. Adopt an attitude of wise contentment. Then get support to address any underlying issues feeding unhealthy attachments to possessions or shopping. Establish and stick to a reasonable spending budget that respects your IRA withdrawal rates and preserves your nest egg through your later years. You've got to do a reality check. You've got to have that meeting with yourself or meeting with your spouse and say, look, here's what we can truly afford. Here's how we can live. Whew. Quite a reality check, right? I told you it's going to be rough. But I hope shining light on these common pitfalls before you retire will help all of my listeners avoid falling into these traps. Remember what I said. Proverbs chapter 21, verse 20 says, treasure is for the wise, but fools devour it. I know you all have the wisdom to steer clear of these traps and enjoy a fruitful stewardship of the wonderful retirement God intends for you. So let's recap the key mistakes we covered today. And the first one was this: splurging excessively on travel. Number 2 was enabling destructive dependence of adult children rather than empowering their self-sufficiency. Number 3 was carrying heavy debt loads like mortgages and credit cards into retirement. And number 4, financially supporting unhealthy adult relationships and risking abuse. And last but not least, number 5 was compulsive, frivolous overconsumption that decimates your retirement savings. Along the way, we shared some practical strategies to course correct and cultivate wise money management as retirees. But don't just take my word for it. Continue growing your own financial wisdom through prayer. Can't stress that enough. If you're struggling financially, pray about it. Attend biblical studies and find trusted advisors that will help you. Stay connected in your community for accountability. Maybe you find an accountability partner and support your retirement journey as well. I strongly encourage all of our listeners to head to AskRalphPodcast.com and check out all of the resources we have on our site. I don't know if you know this or not. We have a catalog of over 400 episodes. And you can even purchase my book, Mastering Your Finances, right there on the site. So lastly, I'd love to hear your biggest takeaways on the Ask Ralph Podcast Insiders Group Facebook page. I mentioned that I have a link to that in the notes. What retirement money habits will you be most mindful to avoid? Share your action plan, share your ideas, and encouragement with our community so we can all pursue fruitful stewardship. And remember, when it comes to taming bad money habits, we don't have to rely on sheer willpower alone. Truth is, folks, you're probably not going to be able to do it yourself. God promises to provide generosity and self-control if we seek Him first. Well, thank you for joining me today on the show. As I always say, stay financially savvy out there, and God bless you.
Thank you for joining us on the Ask Ralph podcast. And with a simple click to subscribe, we'll invite you back to our next episode. And remember, financial issues don't have to be complicated. Just ask Ralph. The information contained in this episode of Ask Ralph is based on data available as of the date of its release. Saggio Accounting Plus and Ask Ralph Media, Inc. is under no obligation to update this content if changes occur. Applying this information to your specific situation requires careful consideration of all facts and circumstances, and any information provided is not to be considered as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult your tax advisor or attorney before acting on any material covered.